What is up, everyone, on this Monday? I am Kyle. I'm with Free Speech Geek. We are here to talk about things and stuff and such and whatnot. I'm with Adam. I'm with Steven. Guys, how's it going this Monday morning?
It's good. You know what? Usually Mondays are not good, but like I always say, we get to hang out, change that Monday frown upside down. Isn't that thing like a rhyming thing about frowns and smiles or something? Yeah.
Somebody probably said it somewhere along the line. No, I had a great weekend. Thank you. I'm excited to get into today's topics.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. Today we are going to talk about drama. What does it mean for the fans, right? You know, who cares about what the actual drama is? You know, everyone else is talking about that. We're always the talking adjacent to the thing that's happening, right? So we'll bring up the drama itself. But the topic at hand is, do we give a shit?
That's a good thing to think about. Should we?
Some things it seems like people do collectively care about certain things, and there's most of the time it seems to just not really matter. So let's just start off with you in general, your personal feelings. How far do you take the detach the artist from the art, right? So I guess I'll go first, right? Like I have the capabilities of acknowledging certain people that are not, that are like considered sexual predators now and stuff. And I go like, hey, that sexual predator is a good actor. We have words, I could still explain this person is a piece of crap, but he's a good actor. Apparently, certain maybe, I guess, child abuse. People seem to, no matter what field, no, we don't tolerate that. So there's a line there. It seems humanity has drawn a line there. What's your line for you? Is there a certain actor that, like, if they join a cause, would that bother you? If they are a part of something, would that bother you? Or are you kind of detached more as an adult, more as an older kind of geek? Is that more detached to you in this point in your life? I'm curious.
Steven, I'll let you go just because my rambling.
That's funny because I was about to say, like, Adam, what are your thoughts? No, I think as a Gundam fan, we've recently had to kind of cope with this because of the Amuro voice actor, Toru.
Yes.
I can't pronounce the F. Toru. Yes. There was some controversy around him recently, and we recently had to have that cognitive dissonance about who he is as a person versus what he's done for the Gundam franchise over the last 45 years. Now, I'm a big proponent of the old saying, never meet your heroes. They're always going to let you down, right? And that goes from like the most legendary creators like George Lucas down to, guys on YouTube like you and me. Like, I feel like I will disappoint you if you ever meet me in person. But, I think that to your point, Kyle, you mentioned things that are like, pretty egregious. Like, we're not just talking about having a difference of opinion, voting a different way, or even actively hating you. Like, I have people that I look up to that actively hate me individually as a person, and I still don't fault them for that. Like, there's, we have differences that can't be reconciled. But to your point, when you reach a certain element of like criminality or victimization of people that can't defend themselves, such as children, animals, that type of thing, then you kind of cross a little bit of a line. I think we could still appreciate the work that they've done, but maybe you don't necessarily idolize the person.
Yeah, good thoughts. It's very interesting because, being on social media, kind of like what you were getting at about like don't meet your heroes, personalities that are making content, whether they're celebrities or video game developers. And then sometimes we'll hear about something they've done or said. And that's the thing, though. It's almost like integrated with social media, because what would happen even to me is some artist would be called out for something they've done that's wrong, and then everyone would group up. And so since that time, like I feel like the internet taught me how to be super progressive, but almost too progressive, like militantly progressive, to where I had to like kind of scale back and really think about, okay, am I just blindly following what people are saying online? And it got to a point where I realized, okay, I'm maybe just hating on things too much. And part of that is when there's something you like, an IP media property, someone has to come in and attach, oh, but did you know this person did this? Or did you? And then it's like over time, it's like, okay, I just need to not worry and not care about that. Not that I'm trying to dismiss maybe a negative outcome derived from those person's actions, but just in the grand scheme of things, like where I am right here in life. And it's the same thing with politics. Like I shouldn't be sitting here all day crying about abortion policies when I'm not being affected by that actually right now. But I think people go online and they bring these groups that come together and they're like, okay, we're going to hate on this person for this, when one, you should break away and not do that in the first place. But two, just break away from social media in general to not do that. Now, I've come across people where then they've said or done things where I'm like, oh, really? And I think I have even changed personally, where now I've gotten over that. Where I think maybe 5 years ago, I would be like, oh, that person, I'm not going to and I think it's actually done better for me. Here's something funny. When Joe Rogan was like, I don't know when this was. This had to have been early 2010s or early 2010s. When he was first becoming popular, I was on video game message boards that were saying, oh, he's far right, extremist, this, that. So I'm like, okay, I know not to listen to Joe Rogan. But that's dumb. I then came around to listening and realized, oh, no, he just likes to talk about different perspectives. Some things are hard to talk about, but we can talk about them anyway. And so I think I've just gotten to a point where it's like, I can enjoy the art despite the artist. And if it's possible the artist did something wrong, maybe enjoying the art and talking about the art sheds a light on the wrongdoings of the artist to teach other people that are influenced by said art to know what's good and bad. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that comes with time and just age and wisdom.
Yeah.
You learn to just not really care. You have your own things to deal with ultimately. And you learn that people that are wrapped up in certain things like this, especially kind of on the shallower end, aren't busy. And that's the key right there.
Exactly.
Not busy.
Idle hands on the devil's playground.
And then there's that Schadenfreude, I think you pronounced it, where it's you enjoy when people go through things that work against them. And Steven, you were saying how like there's someone that hates you and you don't even know why, but you look up to them. There was this recent video game journalist that had formed another journalism company, and then people left there and then complained about this guy. And it was interesting what from that they were saying how he would always like complain about people that he can't stand that hate him. And it was interesting that over time they talked to that person and that was like, well, I don't even know who he is. Because I think a lot of times there's that parasocial aspect that comes with an artist, what they're creating. And we all get caught up in it. It's
now I have a question, and this might be a bit of a tangent, but you talked about something in particular, like with regard to like Joe Rogan and these kind of online, cult. Well, I don't want to say cult, but that tribalistic behavior where it's like you're not allowed to enjoy this thing because of who they're associated with. But here's an interesting twist that I've noticed recently. Have you encountered the you must like this thing because of what they're associated with?
Oh no. Is there an example?
What's that?
Is there an example of that recently?
So I think that there's a few examples. And I think you've touched on this recently when you were doing, your Blue Gamer Bluecast talking about video game news. So like video games like Stellar Blade and Wukong that have almost this like cult-like following and all this popularity thrown behind them, not necessarily because of the content of the games, but because of the sort of ideological representation of what they are. And I'm not saying that they're bad games because I've never played either demo or anything like that. But you do notice that there's sort of a trend online where it's like you have to enjoy something in order to prove that you're on a certain side. My little brother is this way with like the Acolyte, you know?
Oh, interesting. That's very interesting you're saying this, because with Stellar Blade and with Wukong, more with Wukong, there's been this push of like, oh, the developers are feminist because they design things. So that's how it like starts, where that's where we were just talking about, where it's like you're calling out an artist for something. Now, there's really no foundation in this other than it was shown that an IGN article had the editor had issues with some things in the game. So what I think we're seeing, Stephen, and I wonder if you see this or think of this, it's almost like it's the defense force. I think there's that overreaction to the DEI.
Yeah.
And then there's that overreaction to the defense of it. And I think that's, so it kind of is like that, where like, hey, JamKillX, Wukong and Stellar Blade are both games that like people are like defending, and it's because of the idea of things being taken away, like the certain outfits, or, you know, so that is interesting. And then it goes back to that tribal nature that you were talking about. Yeah. Good call out there.
It's pretty interesting. I'll get into a kind of a more heavier thing, and how kind of just like how people kind of approach it more with grace, I will say, and almost, you know, I think writing plays a good role in this, being able to write and communicate. So I will just say an old boss of mine worked for the head. You will know him. If you know him, you can look him up. I won't say the name though. Head of the Santa Barbara Independent Film Festival. And he wrote around 2010 an article about essentially being raped by a former employee. And we all working for him knew that was Kevin Spacey at the time. Yeah. Because he always
So you have a personal connection.
And this is just a thing. And we'll talk about this more when we talk about another subject regarding Hollywood as a whole. Is just one thing that we see is he wrote an article about it. He did it gracefully. Everyone knew who he was talking about, you know, never named a name. And I think there's a modest approach to doing that, saving face without having to kind of like hide yourself and your own identity within it, you know? I'm not saying to like hide the truth within that, but there's a way to, I think, project a truth or project your truth, which kind of saves face for everyone. I feel like everyone's in a self-destructive nature. Well, they're like, I'm going to take this down with me kind of thing. And I feel we're missing that a little bit. And sure, certain people like my former boss had a opportunity to write for a paper, you know, because he has pool in Santa Barbara. So that's a whole different thing. But we all have a voice. We all have a Twitter. We could all have something just take off and be retweeted. Even nobody.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because, you know, the first thing that comes to mind when you mention, you know, kind of not naming names, but, you know, sharing an experience in order to shine a light on, you know, an issue. You know, it's like you think about the op-ed that Amber Heard wrote about Johnny Depp without naming Johnny Depp, but obviously like there was the heavy implications there. And this is probably a more apt example, did you guys ever watch that Netflix series Baby Reindeer?
I watched
I've heard of that though.
Yeah,
is that the stalker one?
Yeah, the comedian writing about his experience, you know, kind of doing comedy circuits, and the stalker that he had. And of course, you know, all the names and everything were changed from, you know, what they were in real life, but still that poor woman was kind of outed, and this whole, you know, media storm happened. Now she kind of technically outed herself by referencing it, but, you know, it's like he also cast himself as the main character in this dramatization of his story. And so, you know, I think that maybe was not the most graceful way to handle it, but he did try, I guess, to a certain extent, to hide the identity of the perpetrator involved. Yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Like, you know, it's such a fine line to balance.
I'm trying to think of the movie. I just drew a blank, but the movie about Howard Hughes, the most famous movie in the world, Rosebud. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
God damn, I'm drawing a blank. But essentially, the movie is about Howard Hughes. There's no mention of Howard Hughes. It's just a dude who owns a publishing company that grows big, you know. But it's Howard Hughes. It's a Howard Hughes analog. You don't have to, and I think that's kind of missing in today's modern world. Is everything's based off of a true story, which is not really true. It's a lie and marketed to be this truth. Blah blah blah. Whereas you could take it's an allegory, right? That's like the definition of an allegory. You don't have thank you, Citizen Kane. Yeah. So you don't have to actually, you know, you could put these truths that are out in society in the world without having to kind of make it about this one person. And that's kind of a problem with certain films. Like I love the Fincher, was it the Fincher Steve Jobs one? Yeah, that's great. It's a lie. It's great. You know, and that's a problem. Before I just want to finish this thought is that if you make it about a certain person based off a true story like Steve Jobs, there's always going to be a caveat of the truth in there. Whereas if you make it about this one overabundant, you know, created character, you could put multiple truths in there. You know, put a little bit of truth from Howard Hughes, put a little bit of truth about society as a whole in there, and you could funnel it into this one character instead of like creating this true character that's really just your projection of that character.
Yeah, I kind of see what you're saying. It's almost like selfish. It's like you could be selfish about something, or you could be responsible in terms of something that happened to you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what's a great example of a film like that you mentioned that's kind of got a time limit on it, right? It's like it has an expiration date. It's like that movie Vice about Dick Cheney, which I think, you know, exposed a lot of issues both in politics and in the healthcare industry. But because it's tied to this identity of Dick Cheney, like people 100 years from now are never going to understand the message that's being that you're trying to convey through a movie like that, right? And so, you know, it's there's that old saying where it's like, you know, stupid people talk about other people, smart people talk about current events, but then the wisest people talk about ideas. And so when it comes to, you know, art and creativity, it's like, you know, if you make your film about a person, then that's probably like the lowest brow type of entertainment or messaging. If you make it about current events, then, you know, maybe it's a little bit better. But if you make your film, if you make your comic book, whatever the case may be, if you make it about an idea, then it becomes timeless and it becomes something that people can resonate with forever.
That's pretty interesting. It reminds me just how when I'm excited about, for instance, Ash from Evil Dead, when I express my excitement about it, I talk about Bruce Campbell, the actor. I'm not talking about the character that was created in the Evil Dead movie that then is like, this is the neat idea that made me like Bruce Campbell. So that's kind of a neat way to look about it, especially when I'm thinking about when I'm writing stuff, how to approach something.
Well, going back to what you said, Stephen, I think it's important, not just in art in general, but like your approach to conversation and communication, right? So if someone comes at you and you have a conversation, what's your opinion on politics? I'll just say general politics, rather than going, you know, you shouldn't start, I feel, I think, whatever. A wiser person would go, well, X and X, so-and-so has said this, so-and-so has said this, and maybe you'll end with a thought based off of your experience off of that. A person takes in kind of the collective before they think about it, and I think that's an important key is think about your thought, think about your initial reaction, but maybe don't communicate that. Like most of my initial reactions are very knee-jerk, right? You know, you see something on the internet, oh man, that pisses me off, whatever, you know, I want to react to it, but you know, give it time to have some type of thought form, some type of words form into a thought that you could communicate, you know, instead of just bursting out your emotion. And I think people who do this in just real life in general you could see this also in their art. They approach kind of like that. I will say it goes in a weird direction when you get to like Nolan, where he just tries to rationalize feelings. I don't know what that's about. I don't understand that.
Maybe
But
it's a cope.
Are you talking about Christopher Nolan, the way he writes stuff?
Yeah, if you look, he like talks about feelings. He talks about it, but he doesn't actually show it through his characters.
Yeah, I've always had a problem with Christopher Nolan movies, but can't put my finger on it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's my biggest problem with him. That and the time. Not everything needs to have time. Doesn't need to be played with everything. I think that's kind of dumb. But yeah. Watch a Nolan movie with those eyes. Like he thinks about it. He thinks about it. He rationalizes it, but he doesn't show. I will say, Inception did a great job with those characters. They kind of expect, especially at the end. But most of the time, you barely see it.
Well, I think that in this current age of short attention spans and outrage culture, we don't have a lot of time to express self-awareness and ask ourselves why we feel the way we feel about a certain thing. And Adam, I'm going to go back to something that you've said in the past about that craving for justice, where it's like you were trying to analyze what it was about things online that kind of triggered that angry response that would bubble up, and it's like, oh, I sense an injustice here, and that's what's causing that reaction in me. And I think that if people would take a step back, like you said, Kyle, and just kind of say, why am I experiencing such a visceral reaction to this news, then they might realize that maybe it's not necessarily something that happened in that news, but maybe it's something that they feel is reflective of them. And I guess like to come up with a good example of it, I can't I don't want to use anything topical per se, but say for instance, oh man, like I can't really come up with a good example. It's just like something because people really don't think about anything but themselves ultimately.
Right.
Like, you might get angry on someone else's behalf, but it's because you're really projecting, like, if that ever happened to me, I would be upset about it. Right.
I think it's hard to get an example because we see someone react a certain way online and we're kind of like, okay, there's something personal there, but we don't necessarily know what it is. But yeah. I agree with you, Steven.
I got a good example. And it's Gundam.
Oh,
all right. So have you guys read Gundam Pulitzer at all?
No, but I'm familiar with it.
So Gundam Pulitzer, EC0094. Yes, Kika Kobayashi is older. Okay. She wants to write a book about Amado, right? And she's going back and talking to some of the old white base crew over time. These people that are seen as heroes, like by the entire Earth sphere. And most of her interviews consist of, we were just hanging by the seat of our threads. We had no idea what we were doing. We were thrusted into this. And this is honestly the first time I've ever thought about it. So they weren't thinking about any of it. They were just trying to survive during the 1 year war. And it took someone like Kika Kobayashi and UC0094 to really have them sit there and go, you know what? I haven't really thought about this at all, And that's more of a positive thing, right? Where heroes thrusted, they don't understand why they're heroes. They were just doing something they were told to do. And somehow they became heroes from it. That's more positive. It doesn't really paint a picture of like kind of the negative world that we exist in, unfortunately.
Well, and I mean, man, that makes me want to read that, because I would be interested in Kika's, given that she was basically in the care of these people.
Yeah.
It's like, man, how does that affect you emotionally and, just like rationally? Here I was putting my life in the hands of these people that they claimed that they didn't know what they were doing. Like, I looked up to them; they were heroes to me, and like they were just as terrified as I was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting.
And I don't know if we want to segue, because I wanted to talk about Alien Romulus, but it's kind of related to.
Okay, yeah, go for it. Let's do it.
Yeah, so I saw Alien Romulus last Thursday. I'm a huge Alien fan. Alien. And Predator, they don't always do the movies good. What's interesting about this too is it was directed by Fede Alvarez, who already in my mind, he had done the Evil Dead remake, and I'm like, so I'm already hating this guy, but not really. I mean, that's the thing. Fede Alvarez is a good director. So this Alien Romulus movie looks just like any Ridley Scott movie. Looks like a great movie. And even when I'm watching it, I was like, oh, I'm actually surprised the direction, like this is actually pretty neat. But then where is it going? And then by the end, I'm like, I liked this, but it's like, why did they make this? And so here's something funny. I took my son with me, my youngest, and he's 11. I think it's okay. And so he loved it, or he didn't love it, but he liked it. He thought it was cool. But then I realized, okay, the movie was littered with callbacks to the previous Alien movies, but without it really being a logical callback, more of a, and not even like a member berry, like remember this, but it's more like, hey, remember this, so this is going to be here too. And it's like, for what? Because if I was to tell you the plot of the movie, these young kids, totally similar to Double Zeta, the beginning of Double Zeta, these young kids found this ship floating above the planet that they wanted to go and get the scrap from. This is the Double Zeta plot. But that's all the movie is about. And that's all that really happens. Them going to the ship is then where the aliens are. So as a fan of Alien, and that's the thing, as I'm watching it, I'm like, do I like this? Do I not? I had a good time watching this. And then I go online, listen to others' opinions, and I'm like, oh, okay, so I don't like this. But really, they were able to kind of help me figure out what it was. Because again, it was where the movie, like Alien, it was its own thing. Aliens, even Alien 3, like they have this like story, this progression of where are these people trying to go? How are they going to resolve everything? But this Alien movie it was just, what it was and why it works. Because I don't know if you guys heard about the box office, but it beat Deadpool for R-rated opening.
So that's a very specific.
They always make it
R-rated one of those statistics that they use just to like up the movie like a little bit.
But that's good because remember it's R-rated, and so what's interesting is how much. So the movie is successful, and I think it's because they use Fede Alvarez because he's a good slasher horror movie style director, and the movie from the trailers looked like that, and everyone knows what the alien is, even if you don't know all that bloated Prometheus lore that they added on at the last minute. So I would say this is a good movie. But it's not a good Alien movie. But I don't know 40 years later if you need to do that. Like, it's like 40 years later, can you really make a good sequel? Or should you try to do something different? I don't know. That's my thoughts on that, though.
Interesting.
Well, this is them trying to do something different, right? Because Prometheus and the other two different works. So they're all like, well, let's go back to in between Aliens and Alien 1.
But they actually, and I don't want to give too many spoilers, they went to every movie, even Prometheus. So, like, I would even say this movie is way too Prometheus heavy for me.
Interesting.
I feel like Prometheus, fascinating movie, but I hate what it did to the Alien franchise. Like, that's how I see it. So this Alien Romulus is leaning into the Prometheus lore.
Maybe they're just trying to like bridge that gap for people like you that, or people like me too. Like, I think you and I had this conversation earlier. If it wasn't you, it was another Aliens fan that I'm friends with. We were like, loved Prometheus as a sci-fi movie, hated it as part of Alien lore.
Exactly.
And it's the same way I feel about like the Solo movie. Fun sci-fi romp. Don't like it in place of Star Wars, and you get a lot of that, right? And I think you get it in Gundam too. Like, I think that whenever you have any kind of long-running franchise where people are trying to capitalize on the name in order to make a product that's not quite in the vein that it's supposed to be in, popular, you end up getting a lot of money out of it. The box office numbers are reflective of that, but people really enjoy it.
See, and that's the thing too. I think what studios need to be more cognizant of when they're making, even if they want to make just a slasher version of an Alien movie so it's cheaper, whatever, I do think lore needs to be very important. And that's because of longevity. Because if you add a bunch of interesting lore bits, people are going to grapple onto that. And that's actual tangible things. In 20 years, people are going to still be talking about lore. This Alien movie didn't add any more established lore or anything. It just showed you the other things and said, hey, look at all these things. But what's the thing to move the IP forward?
But I think questions are the best way to do that. Like, the most interesting thing about Aliens is, or Alien, I should say, is the space jockey. Like, Leave it alone. Leave it a mystery.
Yeah.
I think was it Chris Gore said that the most interesting thing about Boba Fett in Star Wars is that you didn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
And it's like, that is perfect. Like, the less you know about something, let fans go crazy with the theories and stuff. You saw it with The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, right? In Breath of the Wild, there was like the Zonai ruins and this ancient culture that was completely but you know, it left all this room for YouTubers to explore these ideas about, like, ooh, Zonai. What was this barbarian tribe, the Zonai, and did they worship Ganon? Like, all this stuff. And then they come out with Tears of the Kingdom, and they're like, oh yeah, no, we have a whole thing for the Zonai that you guys don't need to worry about it. Stop making up your own theories. It's
no, and that's fun to do. And the problem is this Alien movie doesn't have any new stuff. It's all that old stuff. And it's interesting because I feel the same way about the Deadpool and Wolverine movie, because it also doesn't introduce like lore in a way it doesn't, because of the type of movie it is. It's supposed to be a movie that speaks on the industry anyway. But I think that coupled with legacy is what studios are missing and forgetting. If we look at Star Wars right now, you know, legacy, bringing back old things happens to be very popular. So when these companies are wanting to cut off something they have because they're like, it doesn't work, they're not realizing they're cutting off like this legacy. And you can create parallel, you know, things that, you know, people can enjoy. Because this is just making me think of Alien vs. Predator and how there's so much more they could be doing lore-wise with an AVP universe, and they're just not doing it.
You say they're cutting off legacy, but these producers are just going, 40 plus, not worth selling to.
But it's weird because I think even as we go, our generation of consumers, even this, is going to consume more. Like, and I look at it as in 10 years or 15 years, it'd be cool if there is finally the Batfleck film. There will be a generation of people that already know him. And then there'll be people wanting to see a new Batman movie. It's just like Mark Hamill being in, like, they messed up him being in the sequels. At least they did what they did with Mandalorian. But that's where you make the money, is paying respect to legacy characters, even if you have to not use them for a time. Don't cut them off like Warner Brothers did with Batman and Superman.
Do you think it's this? I feel like in terms of Star Wars, at least, I feel like the hypersaturation on Disney Plus really.
Yeah, I think the main issue was them just deciding to do all this crazy new content without, like, okay, what does Star Wars already have that we can use as a solid foundation?
Yeah. But I don't know. I always said, even before Disney bought it, just one Star Wars movie a decade. That's how you make it work. Honestly.
Not only that, but the other realization I came to, it's like this Ryan Reynolds thing, is Lucasfilm was never any good. They just figured out special effects, but their movies were never that great. Because I watched Red Tails, made by George Lucas. And,
T-Chex had some good moments, and American Graffiti. I like American Graffiti. That was pretty good. Yeah. But ultimately, like I said, what was it, a week or two ago? Like, I'm pretty sure Star Wars is a fluke. But this goes
right place, right time.
Yeah. It goes into that idea of just people kind of doing a thing, and people kind of, in retrospect, treating it like holier than thou. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, and it goes back to even our previous discussion here when we were talking about how we look at artists. Sometimes it's the IP as well. But not that the IP itself is, molesting anybody. I mean, maybe people feel that way.
Not yet. I don't know. I've seen that Mickey, at least the South Park version. I feel he haunts me in my dreams sometimes. Oh, well, if Disney would be the one. If there was an IP that could sexually assault, it would be Disney, and they would find a way. Speaking of Disney, did you hear about that lawsuit about that one person trying to sue Disney? And they're all like, hey, you're a Disney Plus subscriber. There was like this small clause in our thing that says, because you're a Disney Plus subscriber, you waive your rights to everything else we do.
Right. You have to go to arbitration because that is such a it's almost comically like you can't even believe it's true, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, this seems like a plot from like a Matt Berry TV show. Like, I can imagine, him saying like, I'm sorry your wife is dead, but unfortunately, this clause says that you have no right. Like, it's preposterous.
Yeah,
and that's not even like factoring in the public response to it, right? Because
right.
it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that once this hits the internet, as with a couple of other things that have hit the internet in the past week that people are in a furor over, fervor over,
yeah,
obviously the backlash is not going to be worth it. Like,
that's what's interesting about this, because keeping in mind that backlash and what the public will say, when I think it sounds ridiculous, but part of me thinks, oh, well, this is just that language, the law language. And then obviously people are going to grapple onto that and then throw it up there without any other context that may be, okay, well, really, that's not going to matter. Like from what I heard, this property is not even Disney, or the restaurant's not even owned by Disney. A company is leasing it. So it's like that wouldn't even matter anyway. So, but I think people like to grab that, talk about it, because it sounds like something we would expect Disney to do. And I think that's kind of, yeah.
But
no, go ahead. Well, I was gonna say that, like, I mean, isn't that kind of what we were talking about? Is these knee-jerk reactions? Sometimes the truth isn't even what has come out, and yet people are so visceral in their reaction to the rumor that like now it doesn't even matter what the truth is, because there could be some technical explanation for like, oh yeah, no, it does make sense. Like this guy, he can sue this company, but not Disney. And there's all this stuff. But as a result of the backlash to the rumor, now I think that like Disney's hands are tied and they basically just have to say like, whoops. And I think that that's a dangerous precedent to set, where the knee-jerk reaction to things outweighs the burden of truth, right?
Well, I wonder too. Yeah, that's a good point, Stephen, because I wonder if the truth that's there eventually gets exposed. But at the same time, I think it's good that corporations respond to reaction. Not that every reaction, like almost, and I think about this in terms of governments too. Like, are we going to get to a point where enough people, and maybe that's already been happening anyway, are complaining about something online that the government then does something about it, But yeah, that's interesting. It is a balancing act, because online is a good place to get information, but people can go too far in the negative and just ruin it. But you can also go far into the positive and make a change.
Yeah, I'm curious what will be, but that's the thing. We're talking about this, but Deadpool and Wolverine was just the biggest movie in the world. Their parks seem to be doing just fine. Does this ultimately have effect on anything? I feel like they don't care. They'll wait it out. Time will pass and people will move on. For the most part.
Scarlett Johansson lawsuit, and then we just kind of moved on. Even though Disney was trying to shortchange their workers, it's
COVID.
It's like that episode of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, when they find out that like they're selling sodas to the terrorist group in Africa, and it's like, okay, we have a 48-hour news cycle. We need to like bide time until people forget that this is happening.
Yeah, and it's even like Daredevil Reborn. The creator of Daredevil for Netflix has vocally have stated that they call it Daredevil Reborn instead of Daredevil, so they don't have to pay him rights. He stated that on Twitter. People are still going to watch it. The show's probably still going to do good.
Yeah.
Do people ultimately care? I don't. Is it just a knee-jerk reaction? That's what I'm getting at. I keep repeating myself. Do they care? But what I'm trying to get at, are they just emotionally responding to whatever they see? And should we be listening to that? And then that's a even worse precedent, because if they don't listen and they just keep doing their thing, And especially now when we have certain situations, especially when we talked about certain consumer protection laws, where it's like, good luck trying to get anyone to help you with that at this point, you know?
Yeah, I think, and it's what you brought up before about being bored. It's these people that are bored, yet they have access to the internet. And people that are bored that have access to the internet to read what other bored people are then typing on the internet. And you're right. And then because does it matter? And I think the answer is no. I think there are things that do matter every once in a while. But I think most of the time, the things that are, and again, it's time. We are a lot of time is being wasted on drama that doesn't matter. And like you were saying earlier, it's you kind of project, you are the reaction. It's kind of up to you how you react to something you see online. Are you going to contribute to it? Are you going to ignore it? Should you be scrolling and being like, wow, look at this drama. Wait a minute. Why am I in a position where I'm just scrolling and seeing drama? Maybe I should do something else.
I think to your point, I think like the signal to noise ratio becomes too high that unfortunately, when there is something important, like a cause that people should be getting behind, unfortunately, it's been buried under layers and layers of people getting upset about trite and meaningless things.
Yeah.
And Kyle, like you were saying, as far as people that want to complain online, but then don't effectuate change, I think gamers are like the number one population of people that complain about things and then continue to funnel money into AAA studios, and it's like, oh, I can't stand these loot boxes and these microtransactions and these free to play games, but I can't stop paying. Like,
that's exactly it.
If you would just stop feeding the beast, then maybe you would actually kind of make it.
And that might go back to the other point that it could be that the noise we are hearing online actually isn't the largest voice. It's just that that's the means to hear people when they're loud, right? Like most people are probably fine with a free to play game that every once in a while they're just like their Starbucks, they're just doing the microtransaction,
Yeah, and it's a problem. Like, you could do it in the real world. You understand how to filter out noise from people. It's easy to control it in a physical space for the most part. In a internet environment at scale, I have no idea how to filter that out. Where half of it's not even real humans; it's bots thinking at 1/100th of a second. That's where I have no real solution, and that's the part where a lot of people struggle with, because they do want to create informed communities online.
Yeah,
but to do that, you have to kind of dive through that, and I think that's where we're going to start seeing more offline communities because of that.
I think so. Either offline, or even if they're online, they're like very exclusive for whatever. It would have to be, maybe you're just so into a hobby that you happen to have access to something that then gives you that access. Kind of like when at college and you have like an ID.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that contributes to the popularity of Discord. Discord's popularity is the fact that it's a social network that you don't have to be plugged into the greater social network. You have these private communities that you can create, and you can make them as open or as closed as you want them to be. But
that's a good way to put it.
There's definitely a larger appeal to that type of online community as opposed to something like a Twitter or a Facebook page that everyone can see what everyone's doing.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I like about Discord as well. There's a big thing about, like, back in the day, you had message boards, and it was easily searchable, like via Google. And that's the biggest problem now with Discord, is like you can't search it. And I don't see that as a problem, honestly. You're trying to get access to something you were never invited to. Yeah, and that's fundamentally, I think that's where Discord's succeeding, and a lot of people don't understand its success.
It's just like the human mind. You don't need access to every possible knowing thing. You would die.
Yeah, I mean, our brains are not wired with the bandwidth to process literally everything that goes on in the world. And there is especially when it comes to issues around like social justice and things like we want to attach ourselves to these causes. What ends up happening is, like, we have problems in our own backyards. Like, there are homeless people that need help. There's injustices that are happening literally outside right now, but you don't care because you're on Twitter worrying about something that's 10,000 miles away.
I've been seeing this lately between Red Letter Media and other pundits that are like criticizing movies and stuff, where they will then like compare it to hunger in other countries. Or like
I love those like smash cuts where they take like tweets or like interviews of like just the first world problems and just cut them with like just starving children. It's the greatest. It's like that's where we're at. We have a bunch of people with enough time, too much time on their hands, because there's an oversaturation in support jobs that allow you to work 2 hours a day in your 8-hour shift, because it should be a 2-hour job. Let's be real. And you're spending that time on Twitter doing nothing when you probably should be finding a better job. And maybe that's why I don't make money, is because I think this way. When they're just like, no, I'm good, I make money, I'm going to chill here, I'm going to post. And you know what? I get that point too, and I don't get life, and I'm ready to flip a table over. Someone else speak.
Right, yeah, no criticism, like get that paper, whatever, whatever you got to do. But yeah, we are truly blessed to be in the time and in the country that the three of us are in. That we can complain about these problems. But yeah, a little bit of perspective would help for sure. And
but I wonder if that's what we're seeing, because even though I brought up that, and you've seen it too, Kyle, like I really do think maybe the kind of overall consciousness, and maybe this is just optimism of these people talking online, are kind of getting to the point where, okay, it's annoying to complain about this all the time, or maybe change the critique to not be about like some anger. Actually, I should, yeah, it's not about anger and hatred of something you disagree with. It's a critique, a well-informed critique, because I think that's then what makes people then want to go down. Oh, there's people starving and you're complaining about this. Well, it's because, yeah, they're delivering their disappointment of something in such a way that's like, whoa, this is a movie, dude. Yeah. You just didn't like a movie. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's funny you mention that, because there was somebody, one of those sort of online pundits that recently mentioned, like, a lot of what's going on in the world right now is down to just middle class rage. Like there's a population, or he called it like working class rage as well. Just like, these young men that kind of have dead end lives, essentially. I guess technically I'm one. No, but no, it's like we look for a way to vent the anger that we're feeling at our own circumstances. And so anything that comes up that offers that opportunity, that's where like rioting comes from. It's like, do you think that every individual person in a riot necessarily cares about the cause of said riot?
No.
Yeah.
No, not at all.
I mean, we're all just looking for that opportunity to latch on to a cause and express our general malaise, our general anger at the state of things. And so, and just like you would see it in a physical sense and during a riot, you see it online in a much more, it's almost like it's like microdosing anger. Like instead of having this big explosion of physical violence, you're having like this microdose of like, I'm just going to express this really mean tweet real quick. And like, so yeah, to your point, we could be getting angry about things that are much more significant and much more important in the grand scheme of things. But instead, I'm angry at my own life. And then there just so happens to be this Disney movie that people are angry about. So I'm going to latch onto that and join the.
That's what it is.
I used to, with my former podcast host, we used to use this term, biological constructs of rhetoric. And I don't see a lot of humans anymore. I see a lot of biological constructs of rhetoric. They're a walking kind of product of their beliefs rather than themselves. And it's frustrating to like invest a lot of time to try to get to know someone without ever really penetrating past that kind of that construct that they created for themselves. Which is why I always start every conversation with what's your opinion on ass to mouth? Great way to break the ice. Great way.
Well, to change the subject. No, but actually, I know we're getting near the end. There's two different movies or shows I wanted to bring up to review, but I don't know if we wanted to tie a bow on this or maybe the Ass to Mouth did that.
No, I'm still here. You want to come back? I don't know. I could make this awkward. No, no, we can move on.
Well, no, that's cool. This is really cool because I like how, from what we started with this discussion to how it kind of just ended, where I think there's a lot myself or anyone can learn from about how you use the internet. I think the more we take responsibility for how we use the internet, the more we can teach others around us how to use the internet. So,
yeah.
Well, no, real quick, Jackpot. I don't know if anyone's heard of this movie, but this is kind of a big deal. It's an MGM Amazon exclusive with John Cena and Awkwafina, directed by Paul Feige. I think that's his last name, because I know there's Kevin Feige, or is it Kevin Feige and Paul Feige?
Paul Feig.
Okay, Paul Feig.
Yeah, that sounds. Is it I before E or is it after C?
Yeah, it's one of those, right? Anyway, this movie, interesting premise. It's near future California. There's this jackpot, I think, lottery that happens, I think maybe every year. If you win the lottery, like, people can kill you. And I think it's like 24 hours that if they kill you, you get the money and it's not illegal. But if it's after 24 hours, you can't kill anyone. Kind of a weird premise, right? It's like, what? And, the movie is interesting because I think it's nothing you've seen before. Just like, it's like, prepare yourself to not be in something structurally familiar. It's just wacky. It's one of those movies where it's not real life. It might as well be Airplane. You know what I mean? Because like the premise of having to kill someone, like, you think, oh, that could be serious, but no, people are doing kung fu in the streets. Like, randomly chefs are showing up with knives. Like, it's a janitor with his mop. And then there's all these funny one-line, like, it's a comedy, but I was surprised how much physical stunt work was in it. Like, nearly 80% of the movie was physical stunts, martial arts, throwing people around. I feel like this movie was made as more of a practice to, like, do something completely crazy. But at the end of the day, would I recommend this movie? Only if you want to see something completely crazy and you like John Cena. Otherwise, I mean, not that everything has to be Beethoven, but there's like nothing out of it that I got. So have you guys even heard of this?
Appreciate in terms of like films like that are absurd, right? Like, sometimes having the absurdity presented to you in a fashion like that is the message, right? And I say this a lot, like, the medium is the message, right? So maybe the story doesn't necessarily give you anything to chew on mentally or intellectually, but maybe just the existence of a film like that.
It's more like a Deadpool and Wolverine, I would say, but without that baggage of the legacy characters. It makes this movie a little more entertaining, because I'm not going like, well, why would they do that with this character? Does that mean this character is going to show up? And then, okay, another thing real quick, just so I'm not wasting time in case there's other things to talk about. Oh, that's funny. Jamkill X. Yeah, Kurt, California. So there's this other animation I've talked about here before and on other podcasts called Scavengers. I think it's one of the most brilliant things I've ever seen. There is nothing else like it. Nothing else like it. And it's animation, and it's strictly there to show off animation. But then the story that happens to be in it is like, oh my God, what's going to happen next?
And where can we watch?
No, I want to see what's the next little animation thing they're going to do that's going to blow my mind. Like, they show the life cycle of a plant that stabs the guy, gets his blood in its cocoon, creates a clone of him, but it's kind of not really a clone, and it like comes out, and then the idea is it like goes to its herd, the thing blows up, acid gets all over the herd, mushrooms grow out of that, and it creates the other thing with the little anyway, in that, like, the whole show does that while the characters are interacting on this planet, and my God, there's nothing else like it.
Sounds cool.
I hope you guys at least check
this out. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say, where can we watch it?
I think HBO Max and Netflix, because I think it's an HBO Max exclusive, but it's on Netflix as well.
Yeah.
Cool.
I think you guys will love it. If you don't like it, I would be shocked.
There's so many things out there that I've just never heard of, and it's insane. And I don't know how to capture that attention in a world where there's YouTube, honestly. And I get putting big budgets into things. You're not going to get that on YouTube. You'll get that on Netflix and the movies. But at a certain point, I don't know the value that certain audiences are getting anymore. And that's the thing. At least when you're oversaturating it this much.
Because Kyle, sometimes I don't know what I should be watching, and I think that's where that scrolling on Netflix comes from. Because it's like, am I really going to get a good time out of this mentally? Maybe not. What's the next one? Could I? Maybe not. Maybe the next one. And
your attention is the most valuable resource that you have, right? Yeah. And so the discretion that you apply to what you choose to spend your time with, Adam, you talk about this with video games, and David Jaffe brought it up, right? Like, you don't have to finish a game just because you bought it, or
Yeah. If I got what I want out of it, I can move on.
Yeah. So, I mean, in a world where we are just absolutely obliterated, our neurons are so fried when it comes to the amount of content available to consume. It's almost like we have even more of a responsibility to provide, what I would consider like an unbiased critique, to offer people a place where they can get like, will this be something that you enjoy?
Yeah, I take pride in that. I think that's what I do on all these shows we have. Like, I feel like I'm trying to get people like excited about something. Like, here's something you can truly get excited about.
Yeah, definitely. And proper hygiene about the downstairs area too. No, let's not forget about that. Come on, I'll bring it back. I'm going to bring it back one day. Okay. So let's go into the. I guess. I wish I want to bring up Batman Cape Crusader, but I still need to finish it. We'll get into it. We'll do that next week. Because I have some thoughts on it, but I'm not completely there. Okay. I do want to just kind of bring up. We'll touch on it a little bit. The whole X-Men issue. We won't even talk about the exact specifics, but in terms of fandoms itself, where we are not seeing all the evidence kind of at play. But I am certainly seeing people make decisions already, which is a fascinating kind of groupthink reaction. I don't know. It goes back to that knee jerk. Are they having that knee jerk reaction? Are they actually putting thought into it? Are they too invested? Some of you people that I know. And maybe you're too into it and you don't want to back out now. I don't know. I don't know exactly. But I'm curious.
They're not being clear about everything. Like, no. I feel like it's like, okay, then maybe we shouldn't really be talking about this. You know what I mean? It almost seems like it's even as far as I know, maybe Bo DeMaio hasn't said everything that has happened. Mm-hmm. Or is he claiming, oh no, this is what happened? And then it's like, oh, well, that's not a big deal. But he hasn't even said it either, right? So that's what I think. I think it's one of those things where it's like even Disney won't say what happened because it might be pretty bad, and then he's not either. But that's the thing; it's not like he's in jail. So it's not like
that's what I wanted to bring up. But that whatever you feel about it, the key thing and takeaway about this is that no one is getting charged with anything, so it's either two consenting adults or a crime is being covered up. You know
what? If I may,
Hollywood thing.
If I may bring up a similar example that had a very different outcome, are either of you guys familiar with Vic Mignogna and the Funimation issue that he had?
It sounds familiar. Wasn't he a Dragon Ball voice actor?
Yeah, Dragon Ball voice actor. Similar circumstances, a Dragon Ball voice actor gets ousted from their position because of, certain allegations made and things like that. Again, no charges ever filed, never any evidence like provided necessarily either way. But again, I think that there's probably, and you saw the same sort of tribes that defend one side over the other are falling in almost the exact same camps as with the Bo DeMaio situation. So it's just,
well, okay, let me bring up something then. Kevin Spacey, because didn't everything from him get dropped?
I think he did get all his charges dropped. Yeah,
which it's one of those things like, then are there going to be examples where we know things happened, but because of pull, whether that's monetary or celebrity, allows these people to kind of not be reprimanded for it? You know what I mean? Like, because I guess we can't really say Kevin Spacey really did anything because he didn't get charged for it, but
in fact, he could sue you if you said that.
Yeah, but the whole air around the whole thing sounds scary. It's almost like, okay, maybe he didn't do anything, but I'm just going to stay away from him. You know,
and that's where it's interesting. Well, where's the line, right? You know, and Kevin Spacey is an interesting one because that's such a weird, creepy. Because it's like nothing
about it.
Do anything, but
you know, it's like he got the charges dropped, but nothing about him made him look good or look like a victim or look like he was innocent. Like, it really looked scary the whole time.
Yeah, and you would like to say that, like, well, he's innocent by the law, right? So he's fine, but you know. The problem with it always being on camera is you see the subtle nuances, the facial gestures, things like that, and people pick up on that. And certainly the law will protect you from stuff like that, but humans note these things and they don't like them. It doesn't sit well with people a lot of times. You know, when Kevin Spacey made those like weird, what were they, like Christmas videos or something, where just like
the holiday video where he's like talking about revenge or something.
Like, what is that? Like, what are you doing? Like, and so you want to say that, like, certainly the law is the law, right? In a case like a Beau DeMaio, right? Certainly you would think that the law would step in, and
if it didn't even get that far, then it makes it seem like it must have been nothing.
It's a lot of the problem with Hollywood when you don't allow the law to take place. Now there's conspiracy with intent to hide behind it, and it just makes everything all muddied, and it makes a lot of things messy. And maybe it's on purpose to give those newspapers more money so they could spend more ad revenue or get more ad revenue.
Yeah, because
I don't know. And then
I was saying, like, when the Beau DeMaio stuff first came out, and I looked at it, I'm like, okay, what is this? It sounds more like I'm just being, oh, guess what, guys? Beau DeMaio did something. And it's like, okay. And so then that's what, to me, I'm like, well, none of this matters.
Right. And like you said, Kyle, it's like, should we care about these things?
Yeah.
Probably not, because nobody in this audience or even on Twitter that we know of was a victim of anything that may or may not have happened.
Yeah.
We all still enjoy X-Men 97.
Yes.
Regardless of anything that happened during the production of it. So yeah, I mean, getting involved in this celebrity gossip stuff, you know, it's kind of an ugly, nosy trait that fans have.
Yeah.
It's weird too. And I even me, I could be in a position where, like, I went to the X-Men after party. I could be one of those sociopaths that exist in Hollywood that goes, you know what? He kind of looked at me in the eyes weird, you know? And then just start a random ass rumor that never existed. And you know,
well, you heard it here, folks. If there's an anonymous op-ed that comes out soon,
someone's gonna clip it. But that's what I'm saying about, like, just kind of reacting. You know, you hear that, and then someone's gonna react to it. Is that really the truth? Probably not. But is anyone in a modern society where the middle class is collapsing really going to pay attention? Also, probably not. And that's the problem. So once again, guys, we solved absolutely nothing. And I'm proud of us. I'm so proud of us.
At the end of the day, though, we bring up, I think, even if we don't solve anything, I think that's kind of the point. Sometimes you have to just bring up these things to think about.
Yeah.
Right. I hope that when people kind of listen to this, that it gives them pause the next time something like this happens.
Yeah.
You know, just like, hey, maybe I won't hit send on that tweet.
Yeah.
Or
that's a good point. I think that's how people work. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's if you have like ADHD or like kind of like impulse control issues, there is I don't know the name of it, but just Google it. There's like there's a extension that, like, it'll send things, but it won't send it. It'll actually just hold it for a little bit for you. Yeah. So look into that extension. Just Google it. It exists. There are tools out there to help you out if this is actually becoming a problem for you, which I'm sure some of you are getting way too addicted. But that's a topic for another time. Guys, Adam, tell everyone where they can find you. What are you working on this week? All that jazz.
Yeah, you find me at adamblue.com, where I have Gundam Explained, Blue Gamer. What am I working on this week? Another Gundam video, and then I've been working on a review of Metal Slug Awakening.
Nice.
Trying to get back into my game review, so we'll see if that happens.
Yeah. Right on. Steven, what are you up to this week? Tell them where they can find you.
Midnight Hatter on YouTube. I've got something on the 3D printer right now that's going to be probably a YouTube reel or Instagram reel, YouTube short. I don't think it warrants a full video, but you know, I think it's going to be pretty exciting. It's big. I'll give you that.
Okay.
Oh, hell yeah. Nice. Awesome. I'm Kyle. You can find me at Free Speech Geek, FSG Media Group, freespeechgeek.com. Go to Simply New Type. We are talking, speaking of Pulitzer, we are doing the first breakdown of that this week, and we are starting Unicorn this week, so that'll be fun. Or will it? I don't know. I don't remember. I'll let you know. I remember not liking it, but I'm going to say it's not too bad so far. I watched the first OVA. I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it, guys. Don't hate me.
Wait, so you're also a Unicorn hater?
I'm not a hater. I'm just like this.
Even both hate Unicorn. I cannot believe it.
This is. It makes you think too much. It's too retconny. That's what I'll say. Like it's like
there you go.
Fit it in there. That. Just get in the hole. That's the problem I have with it. But it has its great moments, you know. Yeah,
sure.
We'll get into it. Yeah, I'll talk about it more as I get through it more. But that will do it for us this week. Yeah, be sure to check out. We just released a short on last week's video. We talked about distribution methods, why piracy's so in right now. It's so in. But that'll do it for us this week. Yeah. Oh, what were you gonna say?
Oh no, just the piracy's so hot.
Oh, it's so hot. Yeah. But that will do it for us this week, guys. Catch you next week. Sign off complete. I'll figure it out.